Morning, everyone. We'll get started. I think a few people are still joining us, but we've got lots to get through, so we'll kick off. My name's Gai Le Roy. I'm lucky enough to be the CEO of the IAB. I think this is webinar number 18 or 19 for the IAB, so hopefully we're getting fairly smooth at this. But we've got a fabulous topic today. So building on our sports theme. So for those of you who joined us last week, we looked at the sports industry and the changes with sports and community during COVID. We're stretching out on that today, and we're looking at esports and gaming, which has really exploded, I guess, over the last few years. And there's been some interesting trends since lockdown, which we'll run through. The one thing when I must admit, I'm not an esports or gaming expert. You might be surprised to hear that. But as I was doing sort of research for this webinar, the one thing that really stood out for me in this sector, and it's so fitting for this industry at the moment, is the mixture of revenue streams and the mixture of models that are in this space. And I think it's a really interesting example of an area that's grown from grassroots, expanded, looked at different business models, and sort of picked the best of each. And I think off the back of that, there are increasingly interesting opportunities for marketers in particular. So we'll be spending a lot of time looking at those opportunities. I'm joined by people who do know about this industry, luckily for you guys. So we're going to start the webinar with a couple of presentations. We're going to start off with Sean Callanan, who's known as the Sports Geek. And fitting with the mixed revenue models that we're saying, is also the founder of a couple of different businesses. Sean will give you a bit of a rundown on the market, a bit of background and the landscape. And then we're joined by a friend of the IAB, long-term friend of the IAB and the industry, Chanana, who's now heading up sales for Twitch in this market. He's going to go through some of the current trends, some of the ad options, and a bit of a case study, which is where we'll bring in Andrew Waddel, who is the GM for Tourism New Zealand within Australia. And Ricky and Andrew have been up to some interesting things, which they'll talk you through. Then we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion, and Minsun Collier, who's head of digital for MediaCom in Australia, is going to join us, and she'll be the pragmatic voice of reason in terms of how we sort of grow this industry in a way that's, you know, broader than just possibly what people are seeing as, you know, young blokes and energy drink type opportunities, and how we can all grow together and make the most of audiences, innovation and trends. So I am going to hand over to Sean to take us through what this is all about.
Thanks, Gai. If you're stopping the screen share, then we can I can get started. Yep, there we go. So if this works, so for those of you who don't know, I'm using which is a new presentation tool that's available now with playing around with Zoom. So if it works, I should be able to fade myself out and show my presentation. There you go. Thank you very much for the intro, Gai. I want to look at the world of esports and gaming. Bit of background myself. So I started Sports Geek 11 years ago as a frustrated sports fan in what was happening in the digital space. Help the sports scene build out digital assets and digital fan bases. I've got a weekly podcast, and back in the days when you could meet people, I actually did some stand-up. So happy to take on board heckling via the chat. But that has led me into the world of esports, because the world of sports was looking at esports and gaming. Is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? Being a data and audience guy, I saw it as an opportunity, and that's where I was able to enter the esports space with my own League of Legends teams, Gravitas. And so that's a picture of me with a Gravitas lineup. It's not a boy band. It looks like one, but yeah, that's my esports team. And with Play Media, helping brands enter the gaming and esports space. So Gai wanted me to sort of set the scene on what is esports and how it crosses over with gaming. Esports is the fastest growing sports segment in the world. It's growing year on year, and it hasn't stopped, and it's actually accelerated over the COVID period with more people tuning in, especially when we had that space in the market where there was actually no sports going on. Esports was able to continue, so there was more people watching esports. Ricky will take you through some of the numbers on Twitch, but it absolutely has been blowing up over the past couple of months, and just really accelerating. So this is the slide that I use to explain the esports landscape. It does contain a lot of logos. I'll do my best to explain it. At the very top, we have the publishers. They are the people that create the games. Riot Games, Valve, Activision Blizzard, EA Sports, Epic Games. They create the games that potentially can become esports. Not every game becomes an esport, but some do. So some of the big titles that are in the esports realm are League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, and then you see some of the sports titles like FIFA, and then you've got games like Fortnite. And using this sort of sports analogy, I try to explain it. It doesn't exactly run exactly the same, but there are leagues and tournaments. So whether it's here in Australia, the OPL, which is the Oceanic Pro League, that's the league that League of Legends runs here. They have similar leagues in Europe, Korea, and the US. And then other titles potentially run with tournament operators, where they run leagues or tournaments around the world. And then you start getting a little bit like the sports analogy. You start seeing the teams that play in those sports, play in those esports, whether it be in this case Gravitas, my team, Legacy, a team here in Australia, Cloud9, a well-known team in the US. They play in all of these different tournaments, potentially in different titles. And one of the things that is quite different in the world of esports is the broadcasting model. Ricky will talk a lot about Twitch. Obviously, being at Twitch, it is the big player, owned by Amazon. That is where fans go to watch esports. They also can watch them on YouTube. They could have watched them on Mixer for a little time. That was Microsoft's play into the space since shut down. And we are seeing some esports being played on traditional media. So it gives you an idea of the landscape. It is very different from title to title. When I'm doing a sports analogy, I try to express it like this. Riot Games, being the publisher, is very similar to FIFA in that they own and operate the whole ecosystem around the game, their game being League of Legends. And again, if you want to compare it to a sport, it's soccer. And then from a league point of view, you can sort of say OPL and Premier League. They're on similar operations in that teams are being run via the league. They're playing on a weekly basis. And then the broadcast picture, as I said before, is very different. Twitch and YouTube are the main players in the broadcast space, whereas in traditional sport, it is the Sky Sports, Optus Sports, or the 7s, 9s, and 10s that we have in the traditional media space. A lot of people come to this space via esports and the similarity to sports, but just from an overall audience point of view, the gaming audience is far larger. 2.5 billion people globally are considered to be gamers, and those gamers could be playing on a console, could be playing on a mobile, playing Candy Crush and the like, or being a hardcore gamer playing on a PC. And the esports audience are the people watching the professionals, the best of the best. Again, using that sports analogy, a lot of people can be playing football or soccer, but only the best of the best end up in Premier League and effectively playing in that pro level. That's what esports is. And that has an audience that is growing from in the last 10 to 15 years. So we're still talking about a sport category, a sports segment that is still growing year on year. And what I do like is the overlap of the people who are playing the game and the viewers. It's not necessarily people who have to play the game to watch in the same way. You don't have to be a player of AFL, or you don't have to play rugby league to be able to watch and consume those sports. So esports is the same, and so there is that overlap. So there is that opportunity to reach the gaming market via esports and via gaming as well. And so there is overlap in those spaces. So I want to take through a few quick examples of how brands are starting to get into the world of esports. Some of them, we're starting to see a lot of fashion brands get into the world of gaming and esports. Louis Vuitton, for one, partnering up with Riot Games to both integrate into the game, but then also integrate into their esports broadcasts. Other fashion brands trying to reach the esports and gaming audience include Nike, Gucci, Puma, that are starting to push into the space as it is a really attractive market. From a broadcast point of view, we're seeing esports integrate brands into their broadcasts in a similar way that sports has done for many a year. In this case, McDonald's logo being shown in the champ select of an OPL game, which is the start of the game. And again, in the same way that they would be integrating with Channel 7 on an AFL broadcast, or Channel 9 with an NRL broadcast. And we're seeing a lot of brands get into the space via this method, via the league broadcasts. And then we are starting to see, and this is sort of where the exciting piece is for me, we're starting to see the branded content opportunities. So sports overall, over the past, I've lost my sound. Are we back? Oh, hang on. I'm going to move forward. This is the problem of using new tech. He goes back to the slides. Next slide. And the sound is back. And the sound is back. I'm hopefully there. Yeah. All right. I'm proceeding. All good. All right.
Yep.
So I will. So again, back to that branded content piece. I won't go back to the video because it obviously deletes my sound, and that's the part of testing beta platforms. Yeah, the branded content piece is that video could have been seen at a tennis open, Australian Open with Kia, with tennis players. And so the same thing that I've seen in the world of sports, the growing opportunities in branded content around esports stars and athletes, has that same opportunity in the esports space. In game, we're seeing opportunities for brands to integrate inside the game, inside the broadcast. And then we're also seeing advertisers get into the space. I'm going to flick through this because I think my audio might be gone again. So I'm going to flick through that. So that last one was an advert which I'm happy to share with you later as part of this deck, which was Mercedes activating with esports stars to produce an ad. And so there's definitely opportunities in the space for advertisers to start integrating with gaming and esports stars. So what are the opportunities? But mindful of time, there are opportunities around the event space. Back in the olden days when we used to be able to go to events, the event space is growing. The Melbourne Esports Open is one that happens on a yearly basis when there's not a pandemic. That will get 20 to 30,000 esports and gaming fans congregating around Rod Laver Arena. It's very much like the Australian Open, but it's the Australian Open of esports. There's also events like PAX, which is held at the Melbourne Convention Centre on a yearly basis. Again, a great way to reach out and connect with gamers and esports fans. So there's plenty of opportunities in that space. The media opportunities, I think Andy and Minsun will be talking about that, the ability to add your adverts into the media mix around esports and gaming continues to grow. And then on the esports front, again, the reason I've got in with Gravitas is the abilities for leagues and teams to activate and connect you with those fans. That's going to continue to grow in the same way over the past 10 years. The digital presence and the digital platforms for sports teams and leagues has grown in the past 10 years. That road is still in front of the world of esports and esports teams. And so there's a really big opportunity to get in early on that space. And then the last piece is the content creators. So the content creators and streamers in the gaming space that do have that direct connection with gaming participants, gaming fans, and esports fans. And so the picture there, if you don't know, that is Ninja. He's one of the biggest streamers in the world. And back to the point around advertising, he was actually featured in 4 of the Super Bowl ads in the last Super Bowl, just to show you the crossover of gaming and esports into the world for advertisers. And so there are all the opportunities. This is a shortened version of a bigger deck. I'm more than happy to go through it. But for mine, going back to my slides, what is next? Now, when I show this slide, normally the excited gentleman on the top right is the classic. He's the esports fan. He's the classic gamer. But it's a far wider opportunity because we have got a very wide demographic of people playing games and engaging in games and engaging in esports. And so that's the thing that I've learnt the most getting into the world of esports is that it is wider than the 18 to 22-year-old male that likes playing games and stays in the dark and never leaves home. There are families playing games. There are young kids playing games, engaging at games, going to events. And there's a very large female demographic that are playing games. So the opportunity is, yes, esports is a way into the sport, a way into the industry. And it is easy to understand because it does have similarities to sport. But there are far wider opportunities in the broader gaming space across all the platforms. And Ricky will talk about Twitch across all the platforms, across all social. That's where the opportunity is, and that's the piece that is the exciting piece that I think brands can activate. And so that, so for some more resources, my podcast, Sports Geek, I've pretty much used my podcast as my means to learn more about the esports and gaming space. So I've interviewed a bunch of people in the space. You can look that up. And other than that, if you want more info, please reach out to me either at Sports Geek HQ or weareplaymedia.com. That's it from me. Looking forward to more of the questions and looking forward more from hearing from Ricky. And I think this is where I handball in a digital form over to Ricky to talk about Twitch and its place in its very large place in the world of gaming and esports. Ricky, you there?
Yep. Yeah, thank you for the digital handball.
There you go.
Amazing. I'm going to actually not use the tool using I'm actually going to go the classic way of sharing my screen. So hopefully this works. I'm assuming everyone can see the screen because I can't see anyone. Okay, cool. Alrighty, thanks for that, Sean, and appreciate all the shout outs for the Twitch. I'll throw you your 50 later on after this prezzo, but super excited here to present the explosion of esports and, locally in Australia, regionally and globally. I think Sean covered a lot of interesting points about the macro level of where the industry is kind of moving into. I was going to take you guys through, again, from a macro, but also where Twitch is and, follow up with an amazing case study right at the end, where Andrew will talk about it. When we talk about gaming in general, it is the biggest industry in the world. It by far dwarfs music and movies. So if you look around $134.9 billion global revenue, that is not a niche category. That is mainstream. If you go back into the memory lane, and in the year when Avatar came out, it was the biggest movie, global records of box office, $3 billion. But actually got beaten by Activision Call of Duty that year. And that's because, has a bigger following and a bigger franchise. So, it's a huge industry looking into brand space, sports, you name it, whatnot. They're all being part of it. I like this slide because it talks about esports, not just recent. It's actually been around for a while. October 1972, the first esports tournament was held in Stanford University, and there were students invited to be part of the Space for Olympics. And, they were all competing for a subscription for Rolling Stone magazine. I love that. They're all getting in and then competing with each other and, holding up for that prize. Compared to now, thousands of tournaments have been held around the year, capturing attention of over 400 million viewers, which Sean just talked about as well. And then bringing in a collective prize pool of $150 million. That is huge money. And just to back that up, the largest prize pool in 2019 was actually won by, not by Tiger Woods, not by Novak with Wimbledon. It was actually won by a guy called Sebastian Debs. He plays for a French team, Dota 2. His nickname goes by Seb. If anyone's keen, please search him out. He won last year the biggest individual prize money of $3.1 million. Up on the top is the screen, is the arena where it was broadcasted to million people globally. That is a substantial amount of money. When you're talking about esports, they are competitive in elite class. There's nothing different for you guys to talk about Tom Brady in field or LeBron James when you're playing NBA. They are an elite and they're getting some serious cash. Almost makes me a little bit sad that when my parents used to say when I was young, you will go nowhere when you're playing games. I wish I would have stuck my guns. Would have been a millionaire like Sebastian, but something to ponder on later. You ask why? Why is the reason the evolution or the rise of esports? It comes down to three important things. And then Sean again kind of touched base. It's because of the audience. It's lean in experiences. People, it's not a lean back, but leaning in. And, they are in the most premium form of entertainment. Technology, fans are seamlessly able to view, broadcast, and chat in the content in real time. And that is super important because when people coming to games, people coming to esports, they find their tribe, they find their community, they lean in for the community. That's what brings scheduled appointment in. That's what they know 7 p.m. there's a show about to go for esports or a Saturday. It's a similar attention, which, the shows like Game of Thrones in the world or live sports create and gets that. And last not the least is distribution. Access for everyone, everywhere, anytime on any device. That notion really clearly kind of distributes out to everyone else. If you, I love this kind of a quote from New York Times: gamers are the new stars. Esports arenas are the new movie theaters. And I think that is the reality we're moving into. And then, COVID, obviously 19 has accelerated, around the world a lot more in gaming, but esports has been the biggest in this demographic of 18 to 34 for both male and female, a big component for these guys to come in and watch their favorite stars. There can't be an IAB presentation without an ecosystem. I just replicated that from an SSP to a DSP. I thought, why not? And I kind of talks a little bit what Sean sort of covers, but in a little bit more visual way. You got the publishers, the rights, the EAs, the Epic games, and they create games. Those games are played by players and then teams and then the tourneys, which is tournaments. They get streamed on broadcasters, obviously Twitch, pun intended, I'm doing a plug in here, the biggest platform in the world. And that's where brand and advertisers come in and collaborate and be part of that. And it gets viewed by viewers, hyper engaged viewers. They go nuts about these things. So, this is the kind of an overarching ecosystem of what esports looks like. I was going to quickly move into, fair enough, Sean's covered a fair bit about it. Yep, Rick, you talk about it's big, but how does brands actually get in and be part of this trend? So I was going to take you guys through a top quick 4 personal points, how to be engaged for any brands into the room today to be part of us. The first one is be supportive, celebrate the heroes, the pros, the legends in their fans' eyes are the brands that help celebrate esports guys. These guys are, as I said to you, as big as LeBron James in the eyes of people who follow esports. 49% of Twitch esports fans actively follow specific players. They are subs, they are subscribers of them. They know their schedules, they know when they're playing, they will go in, and which is why we recommend that, when we are working with brands to feature the pros in custom commercials and sponsors players and live streams outside of professional league play. That gets the biggest engagement for these audience. Second one, be addictive. Create content. And that is super important. Create supplemental shoulder content for fans to enjoy once the action is over, because esports fan can never get enough. We've done a lot of analysis and research, and biggest 2 things come out on Twitch is, watching their favorite fans on ranked videos, the 2-5 leisures for us, for the audience. So that is super important to create complementary content along with the guys who are creating content. Be present and engage live audience. That is super important. These arenas are filled with audience who are tweeting, engaging, communicating, texting each other. You got to actually bring the brand into the arena and engage with them at that level. Twitch dominates as all live esports, as Sean kind of mentioned early on. And we find that general esports fans spend 51% of their time viewing on Twitch. And, we need brands to come into the Twitch and play and speak that language they are. And last bit, which is super important, brand perception in the esports space. 70% of Twitch esports fans agree that gaming brands who sponsor esports have a strong connection with the esports community. That's huge. And 55% believe that sponsor brands improving esports experience because they're so fanatic and a bigger fan of the sports. They want brands to come in so they know the community get paid, because they know communities are sponsored. It will continue going. So super important to play in that space. So hopefully that gives you guys a very quick wrap up of, things to do, where the journey is, how big's the space. I was going to play a quick video. It's a little bit old, but it still talks about the space Twitch is, and we're going to go into the case study straight after that.
Esports, or competitive gaming, represents a huge and fast-growing industry. 2018 was the biggest year yet for esports, as revenues surpassed $1 billion for the first time. What was once a niche activity has now exploded into a global pop culture phenomenon on Twitch. There are many ways to participate in esports, from leagues to teams to events. Esports will reach more fans this year than ever before. And it's all live on Twitch.
So that kind of covered just a couple of quick slides. I'm going to pass it on. I think Twitch is coming to an interesting place. Obviously, gaming, esports is straight off the gate, but we're seeing some huge increase come onto the platform. Here's some couple of top end, headlines around the world, locally, globally. We just clocked viewership to 5 billion hours. That's huge. 50% more than first quarter, and now 60%. And as we go into, obviously, the lockdowns around the world, but we're starting to see what that given is the platform, a massive jump, not just gaming, but into music, just chatting, sports is becoming a big contender. I'm sure there's fans of James Buckley. Here's a photo of him. He comes onto the platform, in betweeners and chats about things going. We got John Legend doing some amazing shows and live sports as we go. And just to talk about that, we got some big stuff coming into music. We signed Logic exclusively. I'm sure you guys probably heard about Mike Shinoda launching a Linkin Park quarantine music, which was amazing, gone gangbusters. So, think about platforms, the audience. They're not just gamers, but they are actually the trendsetters. So, which is where we see our platform getting into. We work with global brands locally, and we continue to grow that portfolio, as Sean kind of mentioned. You need to support this community, and brands are getting into supporting the community by being an affiliation rather than a sponsor, which is huge. And talk about brands, talk about how this is sort of going through a biggest case study, which recently was the a collaboration with AUNZ. I'm sure you guys probably heard on ad news. It was everywhere in news press. It was an amazing campaign where we worked with Andrew and his team, where we launched AUNZ, kind of playing, obviously, Loser Fruit, which is an Aussie gaming legend in Australia. She's one of the top influencers, exports out from Australia, and it was launched exclusively on Twitch. This was a campaign where Andrew and his team really kind of harnessed and tapped into the community, the fans, the interactive tools to play the power of Twitch, rather than coming in as a brand and just broadcasting. So success has been great, and I'm going to pass it on to Andrew to talk a little bit about it.
Sure, thanks, Ricky. Kia ora all. I'm the General Manager for Tourism New Zealand, based in Australia, so in Sydney. What you saw on the previous screen was Ricky and myself in our panel debut with it's a live stream on Twitch with Loser Fruit. A really innovative way of bringing to life effectively a virtual press conference to launch AUNZ. What I wanted to do is just give you a little bit of flavour of the concept and why we did it, and then we'll go into Q&A. So I've just got a couple of slides there. So look, you might ask, why tourism? Why are you even hearing from Tourism New Zealand at this moment, and why are we talking about it relative to gaming? So, gaming as an area and audience has been on our radar for a little bit, and for a number of reasons, really. It's engagement with audience, or size of opportunity engagement of audience, as well as its storytelling capability. And while it came through Play NZ during COVID times, it really just created a moment in time where we were able to bring that to life. If you look at travel and tourism, it's actually got a lot in common in the sense it's around, exploration, wonder, adventure, going beyond yourself, inspiration, sharing experiences with others. And that's the same when you travel on tourism, or travel overseas or domestically, as what people are experiencing. And there is also an offline-online link as well. You spend a lot of time online planning a holiday and planning your travel, and then attending in real life. And that's the same from, you spend a lot of time gaming online, and then you go to live events and esports. And so, we saw a lot of similarities there. Play NZ effectively, from a business perspective, allowed us to engage virtually with an audience without being able to travel right now. And it's really important that we keep, the destination and brand alive in the hearts and minds of our audience. So at the core, it's an open invitation to gamers and travelers in the crossover there to experience New Zealand from afar. Our approach, very, very respectful to the audience and the scene. It was an ode to gaming and esports, and we positioned it under 100% Pure New Zealand presents Play NZ. So 100% Pure New Zealand is actually the oldest destination brand, been going 21 years. And we operated like a Riot Games or a Warner Brothers presenting this idea of Play NZ. Just to highlight, it's gaming, not a game. We haven't produced Play NZ, but we've tapped into the huge number of angles and factors within gaming that really helps it bring it to life. So we're in gaming and we're celebrating gaming, but we haven't created a game. The real Play NZ in real life is to be able to travel there in the future. So what I've got now is a 30-second trailer that just really brings to life the idea, and I'll share a little bit more around that.
Oh, hey there.
Hello. Oh my god. Biggest open world RPG ever.
Thank you. So thanks, Ricky. So we use gaming as the storytelling construct or device to really tell the story of people and place in New Zealand. That's Manaakitanga, the generosity of spirit, Kiakitanga, which is guardianship and looking after people and place. And that's the same within the gaming community. If you think about it, there is a generosity of spirit there. It doesn't matter who you choose who you are or who you choose to be, you are accepted in the gaming community, particularly a borderless scenario. And we say the same for when people come to New Zealand as well, that you're always welcome, and that's the same within the community, but you've got to be respectful on it. And that kaitikiangi, is around guardianship, and they're very protective of that community and look out for each other. And that's so you've got to be respectful going into that. As far as the campaign overall, a huge number of firsts that we had. So innovative and entertaining storytelling was at the heart. We teamed up with Loser Fruit, who's got circa 5 million subscribers across the different channels. Julian Dennison, best known for Hunt for the Wilder People and most recent Deadpool 2, and he was our narrator. Effectively, we had a Australian gamer have a conversation with a New Zealander, showing them around the country. Arrived as a visitor and left having a dinner and a dance with a Minotaur. And that's other innovative pieces. William Wairoa, first on launch on TikTok. We were on YouTube gaming platform with 82 million, front page 82 million subscribers. And then Twitch virtual event, and continue to engage with the audience there. So a really innovative piece. And what we like to say is it actually feels like it's a gift that keeps on giving. There's so many different angles that we're able to bring through. I really like this quote from the Today Show when they had a Zoom call with Julian. Brooke Boney talked about the best tourism campaign in a pandemic, and it's really now to bring out to life the New Zealand story well beyond when you can't travel at the moment. So yeah, just a quick intro on that. Just a highlight, there's over 25 pieces of content. We've had over 3.2 million views. The hero piece is 9 minutes 7 seconds, and the average view time is over 4 minutes. So, you know, really unique piece of storytelling within that. And as I said, so much more to play with to come.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Over back to you, Gai.
Great, thanks guys. I might get Minsun to put your camera on as well. Thank you. That was amazing. I love that case study. I guess it talks to a lot of the stuff in the industry what we're trying to say in terms of keeping the lights on with advertising and keeping your brand relevant, and doing it in such a interesting way. Like a lot of even when we were talking early on to a lot of advertisers, it was like, keep your lights on if you can. And the sort of narrative was around, well, travel would be outside that bucket because, you know, nothing's happening. But it's great to see how you've brought that to life. How did you sell it in, Andrew?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think gaming's been on the radar for a while, so it's been a sort of long discussion, I would say. What I'm really thankful for and enjoy working at Tourism New Zealand, it's a very innovative organisation, and it likes being sort of flagship, bringing flagship activity through. Good Morning World is a good example of that. So I think the main pieces was keeping it as a piece of innovation, really so that it felt new and fresh, giving people reframing it in the sense of the size of the industry, the audience, the passion for it, recognizing that, you know, everyone's a gamer. Ricky's reference to entertainment and music and esports is a really important one. And look, it's a really simple one that I used for my and selling it in was, or reframing it, was talking about my own household and who spends the most screen time on gaming. Is it myself on Hearthstone? Is it my wife on Candy Crush? Or is it my kids on The Sims? And it's actually my wife. And reframing that in very real terms is made a massive difference. And I think back to the idea of previously when you used to have to sell in digital over a traditional means. And the best example I heard was to get that over the line with the board, with board members, was ask them to say, hang out with your kids, see what they're doing online. And it was usually the 11-year-old talking to the 50-year-old board member to say, you know, that actually reframed it for them. So I think we're in that sort of scenario. If you can get anyone along to it, seeing the size of it, experiencing the events, that live event we had people that had never tuned into Twitch before. The most common comment was, there's 2,500 people on this, where are they all from? And I can't follow the pace of the chat. It's like a different language. And that was a real eye-opener for media and or partners, in the sense of, there's something here, we've got to find out what it is.
Yeah, they're super skilled at that sort of emoji weird chat. It's a different language, isn't it?
It's like the Matrix dropping down and reading into it.
It's a lovely brand match too, because New Zealand, you know, as a brand is really strong in terms of diversity of voices. So it's perfect sort of, I guess, as gaming and esports gets broader and having that sort of diversity element there in the mix as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can just comment on that, in the 9.5 minutes, or 9 minutes 7 seconds exactly, we were able to map out lots of important things to us in the sense of that story, and it allowed us to talk about what was important from a values perspective, as well as sort of key messages within that. So it was a gift that kept on giving in the sense of how we do that. I think one thing I'd say is you have to work out what your angle is and how best to bring that to life. Is there an invitation for that? Are you adding value to the conversation and what that looks like? And can you be can your response be timely and relevant? And that's picking up on the pace of it. So if you think about AUNZ, it was able to do that. There was an invitation in that people couldn't travel and were experiencing that idea of play. we added value to the conversation purely by entertainment perspective and bringing that to life through humour. And then were we timely and relevant? Yes, because we were time relevant, not time bound. I think the important thing from a consumer point of view is we're trying to reflect consumer in context, not consumer in COVID. People don't need more reminding about COVID. They get enough as it is in everyday life, but paying true to their lives at the moment is really important. So we think we were able to achieve that with Plan Z. If you look at the latest Apple ad around, working from home, it's about reflecting their context, not telling them that things have changed because of COVID. And I think we were trying to tap into that. Not that we're comparing ourselves to Apple. I'm just trying to give you a bit of an example.
Aim high, that's all right.
Yeah, why not?
I guess that's a good point to bring you in, Minsun, because, and just talking about having the right fit, having the right, proposition. Are you working with many clients on gaming and esports opportunities? Is it beyond the obvious brands?
We have several clients that, working, and, we have a combination of the obvious clients that are into the, specifically after, gaming audiences and whatnot, but more and more is more general audience, like FMCGs that are viewing this platform or, this category as audience extension rather than specific gamers, because it's still entertainment. It's like watching sport. It's just a different kind of code, and people are passionate about it, like their own teams and whatnot. So from our perspective is that we're huge advocates of going where the audiences are. So therefore we have to fall in love with esports and gaming. And when something's growing at this rapidly, at this rapid rate, it's too hard for us to ignore. And we have to learn and we have to adapt and be able to turn around to find that best solution for our clients. So we have those. But we also have, contextual alignment sometimes as well. So for example, we partnered with Twitch for Department of Education campaign to stop cyberbullying. So it's not necessarily sport, but we use them because of the audiences being, teenagers and young audiences, and got our target demographics. But because it was an online campaign that was addressing cyberbullying, which is a perfect environment where things could like this happen as well. So it's a combination of, general audience extension, as well as the contextual environment, and then also the mindset and where the audiences are.
Yeah, that sounds like a win-win for both sides, the audience and the client.
Yeah.
So is that, are you treating, everyone in our industry wants to fit something into a silo. Are you thinking about it as a brand type extension, or is there a role for performance as well? What's the approach?
It's mostly brand at the moment, because a lot of it is like broadcasting and streaming. So it's a video play. We are sort of, looking at the audiences and the inventory at the moment. What we're really not doing well yet is, the brand and content environments, or, partnering with the esports stars yet. So it's just more of a scale play at the moment for us.
Okay. We've got a few questions coming through we'll get to shortly. One for Sean, I guess, from that sort of outsider's perspective, and you've talked a bit about the commercialization. Is that impacting the industry in a good or bad way? I imagine there is some pushback from some of the really hardcore people to some of the commercialization, or how's that being managed?
It's really interesting. Like I think even as little as 18 months ago, MasterCard did a major deal with Riot globally to be part of their events, we're very common. It's very common in the Olympics and major sports, but you could actually see the esports fans debating it in the Twitch chat, saying, hey, what is this? Why have they got these logos? We want to protect our sport. And then you could see other people saying, no, we want advertising and partners to come in because it grows the ecosystem and the players get paid more and we get better experiences. So it was like you could actually see them learning, and it's still that new. And this is, 18 months ago. So they're starting to understand why the money is coming in. And I think Ricky mentioned it. There is a real need, though, to be talking to those gamers, and you know, I can't have a conversation around esports and gaming without using the word authenticity, right? It's like you have to be authentic, because if you just say, oh, here's our TVC that we've been running over here, we're just going to plonk it in a broadcast, the gamers will automatically go, oh, that's an ad. But if you can integrate the stories, the esports stars, their games, then they are really ready to embrace those brands and go, you know, good on you, you're supporting what I love, in the same way that, you know, brands have done in the world of sport. So, you know, Andrew talked about it before, like, what's the conversation? It is exactly the same as that conversation of what digital was, trying to move that money into digital 10 years ago. So a lot of people on this call had those discussions with their CMO and CEO going, why are we moving to digital? That it's exactly the same thing in the gaming and esports space, because there's new platforms that keep changing, keep adapting, keep popping up, and in some cases exiting the market. But like, that's the challenge for marketers to understand it. But we all know what happened in digital. So like, the thing is, do you want to be the last one on the train? Because we know what happens if you're the last one on the social media platforms as they came out. So there's real opportunity now to get in, understand the space, understand all the platforms and how you can navigate it, because you'll reap the benefits down the line.
Yeah, so it's all about that nuance and tone. It sounds like, you know, if Ricky was 10 years younger, 20 years younger when he was leaving his bedroom gaming, like, there's job opportunities there for that, you know, within brands and agencies who really understand that space and, you know, hit the right tone. Probably this is for both Ricky and Minsun to an extent. So we've talked, I guess, about the opportunities. What do you think? And you know, as I think both Ricky and Sean pointed out, it's not a niche opportunity. It's huge, right? There's huge audiences, huge money. From a brand point of view, Andrew's been brave enough to jump in there. What do you think's holding back the industry? What as an industry can we do to help the market grow in a healthy way? If we look at all the channels that are challenged at the moment from a media point of view, whether it be traditional or digital, we're still seeing some pretty healthy growth projections for esports, but it still feels a little bit underweight. What do we need to do next?
Vincent, you go first.
Okay. I think it's more education. I mean, events like this to sort of, you know, demystify and help people understand, because, you know, when it comes to esports, you know, some people are probably a bit confused what they are. So, you know, making it simpler of, you know, the different things and different opportunities like, you know, Sean and Ricky and, you know, Andrew spoke about. But, you know, just making it easy, education. And I would say just be mindful not to put this category into just specific gaming and esports jail. Like, you know, for example, like Amazon did with e-commerce jail or something like that. So I think, you know, there are, you know, you can go down into the rabbit hole and be really specific, but then also think of it as in a broader, it's an entertainment space, and people are loving it and they're loyal.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and you know, Minsun, remind me to actually officially announce you the spokesperson for Twitch after this, because that was exactly what I would have said, and I think, you know, it's absolutely nailed it. I think
she gets a subscription to Rolling Stone, doesn't she?
100%, absolutely. I think, you know, I think, Minsun, you talked about, and Sean, you know, the education. I think sometimes it can be slight perception as well, you know. I think, you know, Minsun, you kind of touch base this, and it's super important to see this platform as an entertainment platform, not just gaming. You need to focus on the audience, not the context. You know, I've heard in past sometimes, what's the concerns around perhaps the brand safety, or maybe it's a first person shooting, or maybe the area. But we got to think about it. There's brands out there, which, you know, maybe on this call and Waddel, they're sponsoring UFC. They have First Point of Break and Game of Thrones. They're all shows, and they all have their own level of, you know, violence or whatever. But they are the most engaging shows where the audience are flocking in. So you got to focus on the audience. You got to focus what they're like. They're in their natural habitat. They're communicating to their tribes, and your brand is in the center of that, because they know that this brand is basically funding this community, and that engagement is none other compared to actually watching a broadcast. And that's why, got me into this job as well. So absolutely, I think there's so much space here.
And to follow up on that, Ricky, I think part of the point is, Gai, around that education piece, is understanding that esports is the entire piece and gaming is the entire piece. So I've actually had a brand say, we want to invest in esports. Can you tell us how we pitch into esports? And I'm like, okay, but if you ask me that same question in sports, it doesn't make sense. Someone doesn't say, I want to spread all my money across sports. And it's like, well, there's AFL and there's NRL. And like, esports has the exact same thing, because Fortnite has a very different demographic than League of Legends, than CSGO, than mobile games. And it's some of those nuances that are the important bits that brands need to figure out. Yes, understand that gaming and esports is a big piece, but then once you go back to who do you want to reach, and what Andrew did with AUNZ is exactly that. Finding out that it's actually wider than like the 16-year-old that's playing Fortnite. There's multiple segments available for brands. I think that's the piece that's going to be really important for brands to understand, and not just go, oh, I'm putting some money in esports and I'm ticking the box and we've done that. I think that piece is going to be really important.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think that resonates with anyone in digital, to that bottom box on the end of an IO.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew. Yeah.
I was just going to say, our approach, didn't pay in. It respected esports, but we haven't entered into esports. We've engaged with the community in gaming, and there'll be a crossover into esports and back all the way through. But it was how we told the story and respected that within the gaming community. So the entry points on this are almost endless, I would say, and maybe even more so than traditional sports. And I think maybe one of the reasons why there's not a significant movement as what you might think with such a big opportunity is that just takes time to digest. And if you look at AUNZ, we've actually been sitting in it for 18 months, 2 years, to be honest, from a concept point of view. And not a lot of organisations have that time or pace, but we were able to digest it and land on it proactively. So I think, working with experts and educating themselves, digesting, working with experts in it to help navigate it, I think would be important.
So Andrew, your CFO, what are they expecting to see in terms of metrics or return on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm Tourism New Zealand's crown entity for New Zealand. My stakeholders, shareholders, are the taxpayers of New Zealand. So, they want me to represent brand New Zealand as best I can. First and foremost is tell that story of New Zealand, as I talked about, people in place. They want reach, engaging our audience, keeping our brand alive. Engagement would be the other part, and some stats on that. We're getting 10-minute dwell time on our website, which is really high from a campaign point of view at this time, which is really strong. So it's those brand metrics at this point in time. But at the end of the day, it'll then how that culminates into people and jumping on the plane on the Trans-Tasman Trans-Tasman travel. So the true test will be when that is launched and we're able to hopefully get Australians to New Zealand and vice versa under the travel zone.
We had a question which is hopefully quite specific from the audience, in terms of, Sean, you were talking about that huge Melbourne event, which looked ginormous. Are there similar ones in Sydney and other cities around Australia, or is Melbourne the home of that sort of vibe?
Well, as I'm coming to you from Lockdown Central, I'm always going to be advocating Melbourne, but there has been a bit of byplay around I guess who will be the home of esports. So MEO, the Melbourne Esports Open, has been backed by Visit Victoria, so it is a play in the tourism space. So I think the conversations of governments bidding for events, because MEO did steal an event from Sydney. IEM was moved into MEO for this year, unfortunately postponed for now. So I think that'll be a growing space of what type of events will governments want to run? Will they be, trying to attract world championships, whether it's in Dota or League of Legends, to Australia for the international travel. We may be competing against Andrew and driving them into New Zealand as well. I think that's going to be a growing space. That seems to be also the space that everyone is excited about in a pre-COVID world. So I expect more of the governments to say, we want to put our stake in the ground to have these esports events. We'll see more esports friendly facilities and venues opening up. So I think it will be a growing space. And
what about coverage in mainstream media of these events? Is it hitting mainstream?
It's starting to. One of the things I was remiss to say in my presentation is that it's frustrating for the esports space, and it's a tip for the brands entering the space. The esports fans are very particular about how you spell esports. So if you go in there and go into esports and spell it wrong, they go, well, you don't know. And so for reference, there's no dashes, there's no capital S's, it's just esports.
You'll have to talk to Twitter because it auto-corrects.
It does, yeah, that's auto-corrects. Yeah, it is definitely a problem. But I think we will start, I think the events will start triggering more of the coverage in the main media. So I think in MEO, in 5 years' time, when there's 60,000 people on site, you will see it being covered by News Corp and Channel 10. We'll have it on site, and there'll be TV coverage and that kind of thing. So it is growing. I think that's a small step, of acknowledgement. But we also know that the esports fans aren't picking up the paper and aren't looking at traditional media. So it's like the media operators are talking to their audience. Esports fans will get their stats and results from Twitter and watching on Twitch. So I think there will be a crossover where the new media orgs start covering it as a way to reach that audience and also educate a newer audience of the options that are available.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's sort of, those more female-friendly areas coming through. I'm looking forward to a Scrabble League coming, I'm up for that.
Yep.
So it'd be interesting to see how that grows, but keeps it. I guess it needs to keep its edge, and I guess part of this, particularly the brands supporting it, and there's some big personalities in the space. I guess it's the same as the influencer market, knowing who you're backing, what the opportunity and risk there is. I don't know if you've had any examples of, interesting personality matches.
Well, so it is a concern sometimes and Ricky sort of touched on particular titles on some have a violent nature, and some of the publishers are tweaking the game so it's a bit more brand friendly. But then there's also the concern of, oh, hang on, that streamer or that YouTuber says this. What will that reflect on my brand? As someone who's been in sport for a long time, sport has its fair share of bad boys that can do certain
and
things.
Girls, hopefully.
And girls. And so I guess the same assessments you do with, sponsoring a Dustin Martin. It would be the same as if you're going to a gaming or an esports influencer or a streamer. So, I think it is something that you've got to have a conversation with your CEO that might be a little bit risk averse, but it's the same conversation, and also understanding that audience is talking in a different manner and have different standards, but you've got to manage that risk, obviously.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. I know we could talk for another hour or two. I know you shared some links with the audience. If we get more questions through, we'll try and get back to everyone directly. But thank you for your time and your knowledge. Next week, the IAB webinar is taking a slightly different twist, but I guess it's still talking to new opportunities for media owners and marketers. So we'll be looking at new and niche publishers. So we're trying to, as the IAB, support diversity and sustainability in our industry. I'm just going to bring it up on screen, and I'm terrible at multitasking. But we are developing a handbook that looks at smaller and niche publishers and how they can make the most of this market, understand revenue models, tips for programmatic, a whole raft of things that for information for often smaller publishers who don't have access to some of the bigger tips from agencies, from the IAB, etc. So really looking forward to that. We've got a range of speakers, both on the tech side of things, as well as some smaller publishers and their examples. So hopefully some of you can join us for that one. And then the week after that, we've got a travel one. So we continue to pump out the weekly webinars. Appreciate everyone's support from a speaker's point of view and an audience point of view. And hopefully some of you can join us next week. Thank you, team, for today's input.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.